I just returned from what was probably one of the most unique trips I have ever taken, and probably one of the trips that had the most personal significance to me. My dad was adopted from the state of Kentucky, and until we took a DNA test, we really knew nothing about his biological family. But I just got back from a trip in August where we visited the county in rural Eastern Kentucky where his family lived and where all of his biological parents and grandparents seem to have been from. So right now I'm at Laurel Creek Gorge in Eastern Kentucky, Elliot County. And apparently back in the day, this is where people made moonshine. Not exactly here, but all along this little creek. When I first created this YouTube video, it wasn't just to share really amazing travel experiences or to share, when I bought a new iPhone. It was also a place, it is intended to be a place where I can just upload my memories and keep them. So I thought this weekend was a really important one because we are going to be finally meeting some of his extended family, and I thought I would vlog the weekend and share what I see and take you along with me. So here we go.
A log cabin was built by Anderson Ison.
Wow, pretty. As we approached the cabin, standing dignified on the side of a hill in one of the many hollers, as they were locally referred to, here in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, I could scarcely believe that such a regal place was abandoned. An old, wise, twisted pawpaw tree stood next to it, and there were 8 windows, glass, all still intact, with pretty cherry red window frames overlooking the hill where we had just come from. We finished our visit to the homestead by making our way through the wildflowers and visiting an impressive bulk barn. In the barn there were stalls, as if it were ready to receive a horse, a cow, some chickens. A large amount of thin beams across the top of the barn were, as it turns out, places to hang and dry tobacco leaves. Since I grew up in the north, in Michigan, I had never seen such a thing before. I was totally unfamiliar with tobacco farms. Okay, so we are at Alan Ison's family graveyard, or near it, at another barn in another cabin. He was my biological great-great something, great-great something, grandfather or great-great uncle, something like that. Are you okay, Mom? All right. Okay. Tory Mountain Mint, which is the Vicks Vapor Rub of the grannies, the grannies of Kentucky. A family cemetery, with a dozen or so tidy 19th century graves of the men, women, and children who had lived in or near that house. Those who now resided in the hill facing the cabin had been born, raised, lived, and died within that small forested area of eastern Kentucky. Now they rested peacefully on a hill which had grown in the decades since their graves had been dug. Mostly the area used to be open, filled with fields of sun-kissed grass back in the day. We made our way down the hill on foot and drove a short distance to the other hill that towered above the road. This is where we got out and looked at one of the most beautiful little cabins I'd ever seen, probably built somewhere in the 1920s. We continued on to more homesteads, more graveyards scattered amongst the hollows. There were inhabited houses, of course, but there seemed to be nearly as many uninhabited structures. It was a strange landscape. It seemed to have been filled with the ghosts of those who came before, who had worked in the coal and natural gas-filled land and industries, who had perhaps weathered a few economic storms and periods of famine or depression, but could not weather them all and had eventually left. We visited a ghost town, the first one I'd actually ever seen. There was a post office there with a closed sign out front, one that must have been there for many, many years. I learned that someone who was likely my ancestor used to work there.
So if I can avoid falling on my bare feet, we're looking for garnets, amethyst, quartz. All are found around here. The locals have wanted to find diamonds, but I don't think those exist. It's so slippery.
We went into a service station that was part gas station, part antique shop, and part art gallery. The art was whimsical, creative. The experience there had been a world away from my first taste of Kentucky a few days earlier, just days before I had landed in Lexington and stayed overnight at a modern, very pleasant hotel downtown with beautiful views. And took a pleasant walk near antebellum mansions with gardens in the front that were alive with swallowtail butterflies drinking summer's last nectar. Upon our return to the Lexington area, before going to the airport, we went to an area with endless, tidily manicured, fenced-off areas of pasture land. Nearby was a bourbon distillery.
Big copper stills. Smells so good.
I was there to learn about my own personal story, my personal history and heritage. And being there made me realize there's so many parts of our country that we just never see. When I was there, I soaked in a very real, authentic atmosphere. I saw people who sit out on their front porches morning and evenings, and they go to great lengths to help you out when you visit. They're very proud of their history and their heritage. A lot of people are truly the gatekeepers to a very rich and storied and fabled history in the region, one that most of us never even get to experience. This part of Eastern Kentucky, it was between Rust Belt cities of Ohio and too far away from coastal cities of Virginia. It was at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. It had once produced the coal that had fueled our industrial progress and prosperity in cities like Chicago and Cincinnati. But no one knows that. It's an area that has been lost to time. It tells a unique history of our country. Their ways are part of our larger modern day story. And I was fortunate for one weekend to experience that part of my history.